All right, welcome everybody to the Sport Fuels Life podcast. I'm Bill Riddle, your host. We are continuing on with our mental performance series, and very fortunate today to have Dr. Larry Lauer on with us. And I've been lucky enough to know this guy and spend some time with him over the years with USTA high performance programs and listen to him and learn from him, and this is going to be very exciting and great information. So Larry, thanks for being on with us, buddy.
You're welcome. It's great to see you again, Bill. It's been a little bit, so I was excited to see you were doing the interview, and I was happy that I could do this. So
yeah, man, so good to be back together here. So we've got this series on mental performance, and the thing that was really exciting for me, not only to see you again, to talk with you, but your background is not just tennis. You come from a number of different sports. Talk to us a little bit about like your journey to where you are, because we've actually had some people reach out and say, this might be an interesting pathway for myself. What has your background been like and brought you to this point?
Well, I guess like everyone, I feel like my journey's been pretty unique, but it started out in Western Pennsylvania, in a rural sort of area of the country, and in the 80s you played all the sports, right? If you're an athlete, there's seasonals, so you played, especially in rural Pennsylvania, you played football and you played basketball, and then you played baseball, spring, summer, and so I was playing the different sports. I like to think of it as I was really good at all of them, a master of none of them, so I quickly moved into, as I became, a senior in high school, and looking at coaching, right? Because I really enjoyed sport and wanted to stay involved. And so I was coaching baseball. I was also playing hockey at the time and doing different things, playing a little bit of tennis, learning the game, kind of on my own. And then when I went to university, I learned from an instructor. But so I go to school locally, Clarion University, and I meet this professor, Dr. Krause, who was talking about sports psychology, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What is that? Sounds interesting. And so she started to clue me in a little bit to what it was, and she's like, well, I'm gonna have a special class on it next semester, you should take it. I'm like, okay, I'm in. This sounds interesting. I take the class. It answers a lot of questions I had about, why do I go 0 for 4 and then 3 for 4 and vice versa in a doubleheader, but also opened up more questions about psychology and performance, and so I got more and more into it in my undergraduate. Got a degree in psych, and then was fortunate to go do my master's. I think with someone you may have run into, Dr. Dan Gould, an old friend and my mentor and a great friend, and he became kind of the person who prepared me for this world, and we spent a lot of years together. My master's, I left to do some work in hockey. I was a hockey director for 2 years, and then came back to my PhD at UNC Greensboro. Moved to Michigan State to work with Dan in the Institute for the Study of Youth Sports. We were doing a lot of outreach, coaching education work, research, and then about 13 years ago, I was running my own consulting business, and including working for USA Hockey's National Team Development Program. Got the opportunity to work for the USTA in player development. At the time, they wanted a full-time mental coach on site, and so I was the one fortunate enough to get that, and have been doing that ever since. But that journey was a lot of meeting the right people at the right time, having people who supported me, many that I didn't even mention, like Dr. Paul Lubbers, who you also know, who mentored me, supported me, along the way. So I think I always tell young professional students, like, you need to network, get to know people in the field, and if you're doing good work and you're genuine and trying to do the right thing, people are going to want to help you. And I had a lot of support over the years to get to this point, and still have a lot of support. So, but that journey looks a lot different for most people. I would say where the commonality is that we all experience something that pushed us in a direction, right? You know how like a lot of athletic trainers had a major injury?
Right.
Not all, but many
Right.
of them. When I
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
to them, uh, a lot of people in psych. Not that I'm saying they were crazy or anything like that. We're not going there, but they were aware of the mental side and maybe more aware and open to learning about those struggles that we all have in performance that are more psych related. So yeah, we all kind of laugh about that, and certainly in my case, being able to control my emotions when I competed was definitely something I always had to work on.
Yeah. I always find it interesting when we talk to different people about, kind of the background. And that was one of the things I wanted to touch on first. But being in a sport like hockey, it's kind of known for being a team sport, somewhat violent, right? There's a lot of beating up against the boards and whatnot. And then you're over in a sport where, I don't know that we've ever seen a fight break out in tennis, although they're probably getting close. But, when you come from, I think, probably two ends of the spectrum, is that good, bad? Did it help you being in a team sport? Or, what are some of the differences? Because in my mind, I feel like you're probably dealing with two different mindsets, but maybe you're not.
There's a lot of similarity, honestly, because even within the team environment, there's the individual performance. So you can you're working at that individual level, and a lot of those theories and best practices still apply.
Right.
But it's always in the context of within the team approach, right?
Yeah.
What the team strategy is, what their role is on the team, their status on the team. So, and then communication, right? Leadership. So you have to factor in these other things when you're working within a team that are going to cohesion. They're going to affect individual performance and the group performance, the team performance. So there's a lot of layers when you're working with a team, right? In terms of understanding why you see what you see. Mm-hmm. I think when you have tennis, it's easy to be like, okay, it's all on the player. Either they did it or they didn't. Let's dig in with them and figure out why. So you can kind of get to maybe the core of an issue in a performance maybe more quickly.
Right.
Because the relationships are a little bit more intimate. But a lot of those things cross over, right? Because, anxiety is anxiety, and that doesn't change necessarily. I mean, there's different facets of it, right? Playing within a team, we worry about letting others down probably a little bit more, but we know in tennis we worry about letting our parents down or our coaches or how we look when we're on the court by ourselves. So it's just the nuances that you need to understand that are different. But I think my upbringing, starting out working with a lot of different sports, playing a lot of different sports, coaching different sports, has really helped me be effective over the years because I can look at things from different angles.
Right.
I can come at it from different ways. And even within tennis, an individual sport, we do have teams, loosely formed teams, but coach, parent, as they move along and they're becoming more of a high-end player, you want to say, maybe they have multiple coaches, maybe they have a strength coach, maybe a mental coach. So you have these teams that are being formed around players.
Right.
And so it really helps to understand sort of the team dynamics and how they play out and how to work with them. So I feel like that varied experience has helped me a lot. But I did understand at some point, I felt like for me, to get where I wanted to be, I needed to really lock in and focus on one or two sports, and that ended up being tennis and hockey. So
it's interesting because my day job as a college tennis coach, I get to experience exactly what you were just talking about. We are a team of individuals out there trying to win their particular lines and whatnot. And maybe you've come across this with maybe Davis Cup or Fed Cup. Tennis is an interesting place because you do get the marriage of the two. Does that make it harder for tennis coaches and professionals like yourself and players because of the dual role that tennis can play?
I think it can. I worked as an assistant coach and a mental coach for the men's team at Michigan State with Gene Orlando for a few years. Some of my favorite opportunities ever, by the way.
Yeah.
But there very much was an education, not so much with Gene, but I think with the players about the team dynamic and how what was affecting them was affecting everybody else. Because you don't worry about that when you're playing juniors. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit in doubles, your coach will talk to you about it, but singles always takes priority for players until maybe they get older and they're looking to have a career in doubles, or they don't want to run as much, and so doubles becomes what they play or whatever. Or they just know that they're better at doubles, but
Yeah.
so you don't get a lot of opportunities as a tennis player. You do have like team events sprinkled throughout the year. We need to take advantage of those team events. We probably should have more team events for young tennis players where they learn to work together. They also learn how to play for someone other than themselves and yet still be able to take care of their individual court. So that can be really challenging and hard. We had to talk about that quite a bit, that, if you're losing, you're struggling, and you're showing it, the guy beside you is affected by that, typically.
Yeah.
Unless they're really, really locked in, and we know that a lot of times in college tennis, they're looking across courts to see how people are doing.
Oh, yeah.
So they're affecting one another. We always had a joke, a racket gets thrown on court 6, and you can just see like this virus. It's just getting darker across time, right? Down the course, people are responding more. I've seen it. It's hilarious, and it's also scary. One person's starting to get emotionally out of control, and you start to see other people start to react as well. So, the team environment as an individual also, you maybe haven't learned yet that you have to sacrifice certain things for the team, as you probably deal with all the time. And so that can be tough. But putting the we before me and understanding why that's important and how you're part of something bigger and how that's special, and having leaders who can really can kind of take the torch and lead that is so important.
Yeah, you said something earlier about looking at things from different angles, and it kind of hit me a little bit because I do a lot of coach education from the court side of things, and the one thing I always have passed on to young coaches is, and they always look at me like I've lost my mind, is I want you to think about your lesson and the things that you're doing like a 40-year-old woman with 3 kids, and the young girls or the young ladies will look at me like, okay, I get it, but the guys always look at me like I've lost my mind because they're like, well, how am I supposed to do that? But to the point is, I want you to look at things differently, like your members or your guests or the people on the court with you. And for you to say that, it was like, okay, well, maybe I was right in saying those things. Is that something that not only coaches should be doing this, but is it something that a player could be doing, an athlete, when they're on the field, on the court, look at it from a different lens? And if so, how do I do it?
Well, that's a great point and great question. I would say yes, understanding that there's some maturity that has to happen for young people to be able to do this. If you're asking a 13-year-old to do this, they might not be very good at it.
Right.
But once they get to 16, 17, 18, they're going to be better. So there's some development that's happening in the brain that makes them more effective at doing this. So to me, it's one of the sort of untapped areas that we spend so much time talking about what we're doing on our side, which we need to, but we're missing the other side of the court. I remember Matt Spielander saying to us, he visited us in Boca when we were down there at Everett Tennis Academy, saying, you got to play on the other side of the court too. His point was being aware of what the other person's going through, being able to put yourself in their shoes and see it from their eyes really helps a lot. In a couple ways, Bill. First, doing that can help you normalize the situation. Like it's windy and
Yeah.
it's really rough conditions, or maybe the court's tough and getting bad bounces. It's like, well, they're going through it too, and I can see they're struggling. So, it's the same for both.
Yeah.
Versus being like, oh, this is terrible and this is unfair and I can't deal with this. So being able to, also another way is, oh my gosh, like they get anxious too, or they get angry too, and it's not just me. Yeah, everybody has emotions, right? Everybody struggles at times. Everybody makes mistakes. So being able to get outside of yourself and recognize that is important. But from a broader sense, the skill of being able to take someone else's perspective is extremely important. It allows us to be considerate of others, respectful of others. It allows us to look at things from different angles and be able to understand others, be able to understand different points of view, which could be really helpful right now in this world, and really help us to see that there might be different ways to get to the same end point, same result, same place that I want to be, destination. So how you work on that, I think, you could just leave it to maturation and say, well, eventually they'll get it. But I think when we're coaching, when we're parenting, talking to our kids and saying, okay, like, this is how you see this. You can take it from a very specific tennis standpoint, like, oh, okay, the ball's hit you here, you hit it there. Okay, but what are the other options? Like, what do you see, Djokovic doing on that, right? Like, what would he do? And it's just like a basic step, but then also a step could be, okay, we're playing, and you're playing a practice match with somebody else. You come over to the changeover, we're sitting on the bench, and I'll do this sometimes. I'll say to player A, okay, tell me what you think's going on with player B. And player B, what do you think's going on with player A? And they'll be like, oh, they're, and you start to see, like, either they're paying attention or they're not. They're not aware of what's happening, right? So this little steps, and then start asking them, like, well, okay, you can have examples like, I do this with my kids all the time. So they want to tell somebody something, right? My daughter had to tell her theater instructor, teacher, that she couldn't show up for something because of dance. It's like, okay, so this is what you want to tell him. How do you think he's going to respond? How is he going to see this? At first, it was like, well, he's going to be upset because I'm supposed to be there to set up for this banquet and do this stuff. But I said, well, hold on a second. What do you know about him? How has he responded in the past to things? And how might he see this otherwise? It's like, oh, maybe he'll see it as me really being prepared for my dance recital. And I'm taking care of my business. Like, yeah, he may see it that way. And so it's getting them to start trying to think like how the other person might think. And those discussions are really powerful when you start to help a young person see things a different way. And sometimes they get it wrong, 'cause, like we all do, but we don't read it correctly. But often when we're aware of their past behavior, we can be aware of their future behavior as well.
Man, forgive me if I look like I get lost here, because I'm actually taking notes and writing stuff down so I can take this to the court with me, man.
Glad I can help.
Great stuff. So recently we lost Dr. Jim Lauer, friend of all of ours and buddy. He coined a term, mental toughness, right? And you hear that a lot. And if somebody just says, hey, you got to be mentally tough, what does that really mean?
Yeah, well, first, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to mental toughness and maybe what Jim was getting at. But, first and foremost, Jim was a pioneer, a trailblazer, very helpful to me in my career, and I'm going to miss him as many people are. He did so much. He was a great person, and so he's going to be greatly missed. But his teachings live on in all of us. So. But getting to your question about mental toughness, I get these things from the media all the time. Like, everybody's dropping this term now, mental toughness. I'm not sure we know what it really is. We think it's just, that guy that can just grit his teeth and take on anything and never struggle. That's not really it. I think mental toughness has a good flavor of resilience in it, an ability to take on hardship and work your way through it, overcome obstacles, deal with tough things, struggle but come back, right? So persevere in the face of difficulties. Mental toughness, right? It's not void of mistakes. It's not perfect. It's all about sort of the struggle and overcoming and the challenges that we do have. But this idea of mental toughness, and Jim coined that, often gets kind of labeled as just, kind of machoism, or like, yeah, you just got to be tough and not feel and never act like you struggle or are down. So I think that, when you truly look at it, or at least if we can use that term in a helpful way, is understanding that performance is challenging. Yeah. There's a lot of mistakes. Like we always say, Bill, tennis is messy, man. That's why we have multiple ways to categorize our errors: unforced, forced, double faults. Just because there are a lot of mistakes in this game, even for great players. So being able to get through that and the emotional side of it, is really a skill. Is skillful, and that's how I would hopefully like people to think of it, versus this sort of dichotomy of you're tough or you're not, which gets way more into sort of, again, other stereotypes and those kinds of things. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, it's good stuff. And where my mind was kind of going with that is, I guess when you and I grew up, and you mentioned this earlier, we played a bunch of sports, right? Nobody specialized. You just bounced around from season to season, and you were competing in different, fields and different sports. And I find myself sometimes, maybe more than I should, looking at players and going, man, that's not how I would have reacted back in the day, right? And that's not how, and especially when a bunch of us get together where coaches are talking, was it easier for us back in the day because we didn't have as many distractions to be mentally more locked in or tougher? And maybe locked in is tough, I don't know, but was it easier for us, and that's why it's hard for coaches at our age level right now to then maybe have a disconnect with the younger players and kids, because maybe the distraction is what's causing all the problems. I don't know. I'm really kind of like a coach now asking this instead of a host.
Well, it's an excellent question, and we don't fully have the answers. I think that on some level, yes, it's a bit of a challenge for coaches, especially maybe born in the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, maybe to connect. But maybe that's always been the case for a more veteran coach to connect with young people as generations, evolve and change. But I do think the digital age has created some other barriers. You talked about the distraction, right? Social media, just smartphone, everything, right? So I think in some ways it was easier for us growing up because there were fewer distractions. You would go, play baseball. I would go play baseball for 8 hours. Now maybe that's just me, not other kids did that, but because I loved it and I didn't have a phone there ready to entertain me.
Right.
So, the distractions were less, so I really locked in. But at the same time, young people today, if they're able to learn how to regulate that distraction, it actually can make them pretty darn locked in and tough, right? Because it's kind of like we talk about adversity training, right? Like, deal with tough things, and if you can get through it, then you're stronger, right?
Right.
I think that the environment that they're in is a struggle for a lot of young people, for sure. But the ones that learn how to regulate their own behavior, their own focus, actually get quite good at it. right? And they're able to lock in maybe better, at least than I was, or people in my generation, because, we didn't have all these distractions necessarily, so at our fingertips. So,
Right.
I don't know. I'm unsure. I think in some ways it's tougher, in other ways maybe it also helps them. So I will say that there was a conversation about, will we ever see kind of a dominance like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, when those guys retire. I know Djokovic is still playing some.
Right.
And there was a concern that with today with the technology and being online all the time, social media, that players wouldn't have the focus to be generational.
Right.
And then guess what we got? We got Sinner and Alcaraz.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure that it's as simple as that. It's a tough thing to really put a finger on, because there's a lot of factors involved. But I do think we can use that as a teaching tool, right? Because if they can learn to manage like their social media presence, their time on the phone, really have time to be mindful and present with what they're doing, they can start to learn how to better manage the way society is today and how it's going to evolve in the future.
When you mention kind of the older generation of players, and I hate to even say older, but Nadal and Djokovic, and then you talk about the players now. Are you? It made me kind of go to my mindset of: are you potentially just born mentally tough, or is it something that everybody can learn over the time period? Because I mean, you look at you hear the stories about Federer and how wild he was as a junior, and would throw his rackets and things like that, and then all of a sudden he turns pro and he kind of comes together. Yeah. Is that something that you learn, or did he just the environment change? Or I mean, I guess the initial question is, can you learn this at the right time, or some people just born mentally tough?
So yes and yes.
Okay.
Because I know that's not very helpful, but I think you can learn mental toughness or other aspects of resilience and perseverance, determination, some of these other things, these qualities that we look for in competitors. If you look at like Federer's case, what might have spurred that was the death of his coach and him reflecting on himself. And again, I haven't talked to Federer, so I can't.
Right.
There's kind of these ideas that then he sought out ways to try and manage his emotions, control his behavior, and become kind of the competitor he wanted to be.
Right.
So, in fact, there's a goalie playing for the Montreal Canadiens right now, Dobish, who cited Federer and that story as a inspiration for him to become the goalie he is today and believe in himself. So, and he felt like in his interviews just the other night that his mental toughness was learned. It wasn't something he had right away. But to say that there's a belief, if we think about it this way, Bill, that all of us have predispositions for certain things. Like some people are more predisposed to be good at art, right, or creative, or so we have these predispositions, and our buckets might be deeper or shallow, right?
Okay.
Like I think my bucket for like DIY projects is pretty shallow.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I hope my bucket in other areas are deeper, right? And
Right.
So there's a belief that, some people may be born genetically where they have a greater predisposition to be mentally tough or resilient or some of these other things. But it might be latent in that it might require certain experiences to trigger that kind of quality to come out. And some of that are life experiences like the death of someone or a major injury, but it also could be meeting the right person who educates you and helps you train and learn these things as well. And then your socialization at a young age as well, right? I remember Lendl talking about this, that his desire to get out of, kind of a war-torn country and be able to provide and do something with his life, and how motivating that was. And Djokovic, similar story, right? And you can't just give that to someone.
Yeah.
That socialization at a young age really molded them into at least in their belief, partially into the competitors they would become. Again, it's one of those things. You can't totally create a cause and effect and be like, well, because so and so experienced this, therefore then going to be this mentally tough. It doesn't work like that. But it is a yes and yes answer, because yes, some people are more predisposed to be mentally tough. Probably they have certain maybe experiences early on to socialization, and at the same time you can learn it. And if you can meet the right coaches, have the right experiences, you can become the kind of competitor that you want to be. So do you just create an adult? I think that's hard to do. I think it's impossible, but you can create extremely mentally tough people for sure.
Yeah. Along those lines, one of the things we wanted to talk about today, mental toughness and emotional toughness. Is there, what's the difference in those two things, or are there differences? Because for me, when I'm watching players, their mind is one thing, and the way they kind of look at the court and construct a point and behave, and then the emotions sometimes just are a different set of skills, or it's just this different thing out there where something just maybe takes them down a different path. What are the differences in those two?
Well, and there probably will be arguments against this, so it's just kind of my belief, and I think there is some research to back it, but this idea of emotional strength or emotional toughness would be that you're really able to have these emotional experiences and you're able to work through it. You're able to experience loss. You're able to experience high levels of anger, frustration, disappointment, embarrassment, sadness, and able to refocus and get back into the present, get back to a more stable kind of emotional place. So I'm sure a lot of academics would fold this idea of emotional toughness or strength into mental toughness, and that's totally fine, I guess. I just like to call it out because I think that we need to start talking about our emotions more, especially guys, and how we're experiencing them. Now, another way to look at it might be like emotional intelligence,
right?
In terms of being aware of your own emotions, other people's emotions, sort of how that experience is happening, and how we're affecting people. But emotions are indelibly connected to the experience, right? And I think a lot of times the good things that come from the sport experience are because those emotions are attached to it, right? It deepens the experience, the meaning of it. And yet a lot of times mental coaches, teachers, psychologists, therapists maybe are trying to tell us hey, we need to stop letting those emotions affect us.
Yeah.
It's wait a second, right? If it's that important to the experience, yet you're telling me not to really have those emotions, that's really confusing. And so the emotions aren't the problem, because they're natural, they're inherent, we feel them. And I learned this from Cal Botterill, who was a great Canadian sports psychologist, that there's a lot of value for every emotion we have, and those emotions motivate us, they create focus, they really help us, connect with our experience, connect with others. We know that emotion also creates memories and learning. So if you're in an emotional experience, you're more likely to remember it, right? It imprints that deeper. So emotions play a major role in our athletic experience, and I think we're better off to try and understand it and manage the emotions and try to even take advantage of our emotions versus trying to avoid them, suppress them. So we need to talk about those emotions more with our players. We need to talk about how those emotions are affecting what we do, and talk about it in a way where these emotional experiences we have, we can't really control them. If you're going to get angry, you're going to get angry.
Yeah.
What you control is your response to your anger. And that's a very stoic philosophy, but very important because those are two different experiences. One is something happens, I think about it, maybe even subconsciously I'm wired to think a certain way, and then I have an emotional experience. And that experience dictates how I behave, good or bad.
Yeah.
But that feeling or that emotion that's going on is one thing. How you respond to that is another thing. And so if you can recognize that and say, okay, I'm feeling angry because of this, how do I want to respond to that? And putting space between the stimulus that's making you angry and your response. That's what we own. We don't own the emotion. We just experience it. Now, how we regulate it, we can maybe change the intensity of what we feel, but I can't fully control my anger. What I can do is respond in effective ways. And that gives us back what I think is an emotional strength, where we're feeling what we feel, but we're not slaves to that feeling. We're not stuck to our emotional habits. We get to choose how we're going to respond to that. And that is an extremely important concept. So while we're telling young girls, hey, don't get angry, we're telling them to do something they cannot do. That's impossible. And so what they learn to do is suppress it, push it down, not feel it. So now they're not processing it. So now they're not really aware of their emotional experience, right? And so being able to help young people understand that these emotions are all normal and they can be helpful in understanding what we're going through, and certainly helpful to our performance. Maybe we can develop and create not only even better competitors, but healthier people. So, I think it starts with really understanding that these feelings are normal and we all experience them, and they actually can help us. When I get angry, it actually gives me energy. I want to make up for what happened. I want to make something happen, right?
Yeah.
It's just that most people aren't very good at being able to channel that anger into something productive.
Into the right path. The right path.
It's hard to manage the intensity of that anger. So anger is a risky thing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Interesting. I never really heard of this or thought about this growing up, and it seems to be a buzzword, but probably applicable to what we're talking about in the word triggering, right? And so you hear it negatively. Well, I don't want to be triggered for this or that. But are there certain things that maybe athletes need to start to identify, or maybe coaches can help them identify, that will be triggering to send them down that emotional roller coaster side of things? Because I've seen just beautiful tennis, and then one thing happens, one bad line call, or one bird lands on the court, all kinds of crazy things, and then that player literally just goes into left field. Clearly they were triggered by something. So give us your take on triggers.
Yeah, that's that's something that's come into the sort of human language and used in a different way in the last decade or so, because we didn't use that term when I was younger. But I started using the term trigger just as a way, working with hockey players who were getting very emotional and angry when something happened to them on the ice, and then they would respond by hitting somebody with their stick or punching them or elbowing them and taking a penalty and creating an unsafe situation. So we would talk about things that would trigger their emotion to spike, that then would create an aggressive response, right? And so they would come to learn that, okay, I need to be aware of these triggers, so therefore I can anticipate it and start to regulate it. But if we're not aware of it, the emotional experience hits us, and it may override whatever regulation we have, right? And now we're going down into that rabbit hole of, this is unfair, I'm angry, and somebody's going to pay for it. Now in tennis, it comes out differently. Like you said, we don't really fight in tennis, which is good, but it comes out.
Should we? I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'd solve some of these disputes, right?
I'm just spitballing here, okay?
I think it would sell a lot of tickets. But
we could.
It's the right thing. You're going to get more people at your college matches if you have fighting.
If we have a brawl, right? I mean, I'm just saying, you know.
I'm not sure it's the right thing. Yeah, but getting back to the point of, in tennis, we have these triggers, right, that affect the performance, that create these other emotions. Like, if I double fault on an important point, do I then start to spiral where all I can think about is that double fault, and I start getting frustrated and anxious, and now that's affecting the next point and the next point, the next time I serve. You got to be aware of those. So if you're coming at this from an emotional intelligence angle, understanding your emotional experience, aware of the emotions that you're having and why you're having them, is very important. And then understanding how they affect your behavior is very important. So yes, players need to go deeper into their experiences and understand why they're feeling what they're feeling, so they can start to take back control over their response, right? Because you have to unearth how they're thinking. For example, with anger, Bill, we get angry, we're not probably even aware of the thoughts that are rattling around in our brain that are creating anger. We have these kind of habits and scripts in our brain, like, oh, if this person does this, it's game on. Not thinking about, well, why? Well, because, I feel that's unfair, or that's, it's unsafe. But if we were to take that moment, space between stimulus and response, to breathe and be like, wait a second, why do I want to punch this guy in the face? Oh, because I don't like it when people talk about me this way, but that's really my issue, not his, right? I don't control what he does. I only control myself. And by the time you've gone through this process, you're like, I don't want to punch this guy anymore. I want to work on myself.
Right.
Now, again, that's highly skillful, and that takes work. But the point is that players need to be aware of situations that trigger strong emotional reactions, and dig in and understand, well, what's the thinking behind that creates that anger, that frustration, that disappointment, whatever it is. And until you get there, you can't really fully change that behavior. You can put Band-Aids on it, like, go to your towel. Okay, I still want to, just freaking throw my racket. Okay, but if you're starting to go to the towel, breathe to lower the intensity of that experience, and then thinking about, like, oh, okay, like, everybody double faults. It happens. But I know if I do this, I can make the next serve. And if you can get into that kind of response, now you can see players bounce back and really respond well to their anger. They still had a lot of anger, but they were able to refocus it. Djokovic is a master of this, by the way, a master. And anybody listening to this should go to his 60 Minutes interview, and you will understand why he's so good at it, at refocusing. Because he gets angry. He does stuff, right? He still blasts ball and almost nailed somebody, right, at the U.S. Open. He's not perfect, but he has a way of refocusing it it's really skillful.
Do you think that Nadal was maybe better at that than some of the others? Because, like, it seemed like he never got mad. You hear that he never broke a racket. That was one of the things that was told he should never do. And is that a situation where he was just like so unique? Because you run across kind of these people sometimes. It's like they just never seem to get frustrated or mad or anything. Are they just better than the rest of us, or did they have someone helping them early on? Because that's a massive skill right there.
Yeah, and I think that that environment that Rafa grew up in with Uncle Tony and just the family, and I don't think you can duplicate that.
Yeah.
And so, and there's just, he's also seems to be a very routine, almost obsessive individual in some of his rituals. So there's aspects about him that I think lent themselves to having this sort of emotionally sort of stable, high energy, what we would kind of look at and be like, that's how I want my kid to be, right there.
Yeah.
That guy. Djokovic, in his own way, is an unbelievable competitor, extremely mentally tough as well. And Roger or Serena, right? They all kind of have their own ways of being great competitors and being mentally tough. So the beauty of it, Bill, I think, is there's not one way. There's not one profile to say like, oh, you got it, you don't. I think it can be done in different ways. It can look different. Again, Novak, Serena, they would wear their emotions on their sleeve. You would know how they were feeling, but they would be able to refocus it in their own ways. Whereas Raja and Rafa were more likely to, not really allow that to come out and manage it really well, and and show this sort of stable, confident presence all the time. So then it's up to the individual coach to say which profile do I want more. I mean, honestly, I would take any of them. So if my kids could be like that someday, then I would be proud of what they've become in each one of those people. So
you mentioned Uncle Tony and the upbringing or the environment. Is there something that coaches could do better to create better environments? Because I kind of go back to my early days as a coach, and very fortunate to spend time at Bollettieri Academy and around Nick, and I would say and I think he even said this himself, he wasn't like the smartest coach ever, but he created an amazing environment at the academy for players and coaches, and I would argue with anybody that he was probably dead on with that. So is environment maybe more important than anything else, or is it a huge piece to this puzzle?
It is a huge piece of the puzzle, and there are many who would argue that environment's the most important thing. Again, I always kind of see it both ways. I think you still have to have talent and you still have to have skill and all these things, but put that in the wrong environment, usually people aren't able to become what they want to be. Put it in a good environment, right, and an optimal environment, and you can develop great competitors, great performers. We know that putting good young athletes together to compete together is just a good thing, because they can push each other, raise themselves up. But I think that coaches, more importantly, more practically, can change environments to really develop more resilience. This is something that I've worked a lot on, and we have the Mental Skills and Drills Handbook that has a lot of these different things that coaches can do. But for example, if you're creating opportunities to deal with adversity in practice, right? Like Uncle Tony, one of the stories is that he made Rafa play with old balls. You're just going to play with these balls, you're not going to complain, and you're going to figure out how to hit it and control it. And to this day, it's stuff like that Rafa just seems unfazed most of the time by things that would bother other people. And maybe that was just a stroke of genius. One of those things that Tony did, that did allow to develop this sort of mentality that Rafa has. So, but I think that, trying to recreate Rafa is really impossible, but I think to incorporate distractions, incorporate adversity, is very useful. At first, I think you teach mental skills and routines so the kids are prepared to deal with it, and then you put them in environments where they're challenged, right? Now, just playing practice matches, playing up and down the river, stuff like that, dingles, I mean, some of the stuff's just going to come out naturally, and then you have to deal with it, right? So competing in practices is very important, and then working on these skills, finding the teaching moments, right? Like, oh, okay, you're getting really emotional. What did we talk about? We talked about going to the towel, taking a breath, letting that kind of towel wipe away the past, wash away with your breath, and then think of one thing that you can do right now to make things better.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit with more shape, higher over the net. Okay, great. Commit yourself to that. Let's go do that. You can control that. And working through with players on the court on that is extremely powerful. I think too often, this is just my bias, but as many coaches are quick to be like, well, just giving them the answer like, well, if you had done this, then the ball would have gone in. It's like, great, but maybe that's in one ear and out the other because they're angry at the way they're playing versus, hey, go to the towel, take a breath, tell me about what's going on, how do you want to deal with it? Taking them through a couple questions and requiring them to come up with an answer. I was working with a player on court and she was really struggling to manage her emotions.
Yeah.
If I had come in and said, well, you need to do this, it wouldn't have worked. So what I did was, standing at the back of the court, she got angry, she made an unforced error, acted out. I'm like, okay, I see that you're angry. I understand it. I'd probably be angry too. Let's take a breath. Take a breath with me. And we took a breath together. And then I said, okay, tell me a little bit. We only have a few seconds. What's happening? And she's like, I'm playing terrible. Okay, well, what could you do about it? Like, is there one thing that you could maybe focus on right now that could help you? And she said, no, she couldn't think of anything. I'm like, hold on a second. This one thing, we're not going to go to the baseline and play another point with all this anger and lack of direction. You got to give me one thing that you're going to do. She's like, all right, I'm going to get my feet in position for every ball. Okay. Just dedicate yourself to that and go. And over time, things got better and better.
Yeah.
And by the end of the practice, she was playing pretty well because she had worked through the emotion of it and decided the response versus just letting the emotion take her in a direction where I'm terrible, I can't play, there's nothing I can do about it. That spiraling, we have to intervene. And there are opportunities on the court every single day to help with that. And I think we need to spend more time doing that. But I also know our coaches need help to do that as well. So I understand it's not the easiest thing to do for a technical coach. But it is something we have to get better at.
Well, Larry, this has been amazing. The hour literally has like flown by, but I wanna end with one question, and this is kind of a big one. But is there maybe one thing that a coach who's listening could try to do or implement, like maybe one important thing, one nugget that a coach should be able to take with them to help their players be a little bit more mentally tough or mentally strong, tomorrow when they get on the court with them?
You're putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
So many things, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things.
Yeah.
I think, if you're to start, a great starting place is for your players to understand that mistakes are part of learning and that they're an opportunity to give yourself feedback or to receive feedback to get better. They're not an evaluation of how bad you are, how terrible your progress is. It's just a moment in time, and it'll pass. But if you can learn from it, it can be a moment that creates growth. And so I think if you start changing how you look at it, it's like when people make a mistake, instead of being like, and reacting, it's like, okay, tell me about what you would like to do differently with that, right? And intervening in those ways versus just being like, well, you need to hit it higher over the net. It's like, no doubt. But I'm not able to do it right now.
Right.
So I think changing that interaction and helping the players understand that it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, I want you making mistakes. I want you from 10 feet behind a baseline to blast one down the line on the forehand and miss it terribly, because that gives us a teachable moment now to understand, like, that had about 0.1% chance of being in. So what's a better choice? What do you think would be better? What would keep you in the point? Oh, okay, to go cross and high. Okay, well, maybe let's try that next time and see what happens. So, again, having those kinds of conversations and using mistakes as an opportunity to learn. I know a lot of our coaches do a great job with this, but to me that's a starting point. And if you're doing that, then bringing in like the breathing and just breathe and believe. Take a breath. Remind yourself of one thing that you can do, you have control over, you're going to make happen. That's a basic starting point, right, Bill? But that can help create this mental toughness we're looking for, this resilience that we want. And to me, what I would love to see, that, coaches can do it in their own way, but that we're all sort of really encouraging players to address these things that really frustrate them. With composure and with an ability to come back and believe in themselves and commit to getting better or to their game. So breathe and believe is a good, I think, home base to start. And so I'll leave it at that. I know I ranted. It was supposed to be one thing.
No. Dude, this has been an hour of just gold nuggets, man. Just sprinkled all throughout this, and once again, just really appreciate your time and all the things that you've done for not only the players there in Orlando, but the coaches. I go back to the times we were together with those high performance programs, and I think. Just having these times together is hopefully growing tennis in the right way, from not just maybe making more players, but making better players, better coaches, smarter people in general. So, man, I thank you once again so much for your time, buddy. Everyone, big hand for Dr. Larry Lauer. I'd like to call him a friend of mine, and also a super good dude. You've been watching the Sport Fuels Life podcast. Thanks for watching. Our mental performance series continues. And Larry, I'll see you somewhere down the road, buddy.
Looking forward to it, Bill. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.